It kind of hurts my cause a lot when people get censored, because I'm out here trying to tell people, look, you have a problem with immigration, you have a problem with some of these things that are happening in the country. Yeah, I hear you. It makes sense. You're normal for believing that. It's totally normal. How do we respond to that? Well, we get involved in the political process, as we're supposed to in a democracy, in a self-governing, apparently, democracy. You're supposed to get educated, start a family, become a well-functioning member of society, and try to influence things a normal way. Well, it doesn't really help people like me out when everybody who tries to do that is booed and they get kicked out and they get fired and they get shut down and everything else. And it actually helps the people encouraging violence. Because what does it do? It only vindicates people that are saying the system will not help these problems. Because there are problems. There are big problems that are happening. And when the system does not address them, and it says that everybody who has an issue with those or is sympathetic to those issues is crazy or an extremist, well, eventually you're going to meme that into existence. Eventually, you've created an enemy that should never have existed before, which is, I think, what you see with Christ Church and with this. If people like myself and others are being listened to, maybe people wouldn't go down these dark, crazy, fringe paths online. I think that's really the problem. And we said that last time. We said there'd be more of this because of this problem. And here we are. Is anybody surprised by this? I feel like people like me, people who watch this show, are not surprised. We're going to continue to see things like this on both sides. You're going to see more copycat attacks, I'm sure. You're going to see more Muslim attacks like this that will be carried out or maybe thwarted. It's kind of interesting which ones get thwarted and which ones don't, right? You ever notice, and this is a little bit of an aside, which I think is important, you ever notice how after Donald Trump got elected, you never saw an ISIS attack ever again? Or the ones that occurred, you never heard about them in the media? Isn't that sort of interesting how that works? Because I remember before he got elected, they were like every other week. But then he gets elected, talking about Muslim ban and this kind of stuff, and then they just all get thwarted. Then you start hearing stories out of Germany and France and England how they're preemptively rounding up terrorists. You know, it really makes you think. But in any case, that aside, I think people who watch this show, people who understand the underlying problems here, are not surprised when these things happen. Oh, white nationalists shooting up someplace? Big surprise. A Muslim shooting up someplace. Wow, what is it today? Wednesday again? Monday again? You know, a left-wing attack, whatever. This is what happens when you get different people. How could anybody believe you would get anything other than this? When you have all these people living together, particularly in a city like Los Angeles or San Diego, is anybody surprised it happens in California of all places? You get all these people living together in close quarters in the same city, and you've got the heat, and you've got traffic, and you've got water running low, and you've got resource wars basically happening, and gang wars. Is it any surprise then that people who are squashed into these living conditions with diametrically opposite views and increasing amounts of violence decide then to take matters into their own hands? It shouldn't surprise anybody. This is the world we're living in. It's not white nationalist attack and Muslim attack anymore. It's diversity wars. That's what it is. Sure, everybody has their own motivation, but what's the root cause underlying it all? Why does a Christchurch shooting, why does he get born? What creates that radicalization? It was posts on 8chan. People have been posting on 8chan for a long time. People have been posting on 4chan for a long time. It's only recently that you start to see an uptick in these kinds of things. And why do you think that is? It's because the demographic change is hitting. You know, when the demographic change hits, that's when you start to see these kinds of problems. Is anybody truly surprised? And it's actually interesting. I guess everybody in the media didn't really read Brenton Tarrant's manifesto. I know all these media people, they do this new thing where they say, we're not going to say the shooter's name because that's all they're after is infamy. That's all they're after is they want to get their name heard or something like that. We're not going to talk about what they wrote. That really kind of does us a disservice because, you know, everybody else knows his name. Everybody else read the manifesto. We're going to pretend like what? These things just simply don't exist. If you actually read the manifesto after Christchurch, Brenton Tarrant has already achieved everything he set out to accomplish. And it wasn't simply the attack on the mosque, right? If you read the manifesto, he said he knew full well what he was doing. He said, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to have a GoPro, I'm going to live stream it, I'm choosing this location, I'm choosing this weapon. Why? Because I want gun control. He said, I want gun control because I know that if there's gun control in America or a debate about gun control, this will accelerate things. If the government goes for people's guns, there will be more violence and more people are going to get out in the streets. He said, why did I choose to live stream it? Because I want there to be retribution. I want Muslims to go out and attack people. He said, I want to basically ignite this kind of a conflict. That was the gist of it. And the media basically played right into his hands. How did they paint it? Oh, it's a white nationalist attack. We got to go after these people. We're going to take their guns. We're going to ban them, and so on. And then the Muslims played into their hands, and so on and so forth. And here we are, 2 attacks down. Is this the end of it? I hope. But I think you're only going to see more of it, frankly, because, I think everybody's really just sort of not growing, not learning from these events. I think in a sick and weird way, perhaps the elites in the country want this to happen. I think they really do. Because you got to imagine, we got the smartest people in the world working for these governments, right? I mean, they go to MIT and Harvard and everything else. You got all these political scientists. I think they basically understand what's happening here, or maybe they should. Do we really believe that they're dumb enough to not understand what's happening here? Do we really think that they're dumb enough to not understand things that I'm saying on this show? I'm 20 years old, college dropout, whatever. Do you think they're dumb enough to not entertain these contingencies? Perhaps. Or maybe they know these things are happening, and maybe they, in a sick way, want it to happen. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg and all these other characters know, maybe even people in the government know, that if more attacks like this happen, it's only a pretext to wipe people like us out. It's only a pretext to paint us in the wrong way, right? In a way, Brenton Tarrant and the shooter at the synagogue were the greatest gift to the left. Horrible attacks, don't get me wrong, horrible atrocities, but in the sense that this can now be used as a pretext to delegitimize, hunt, target, deplatform all the legitimate political opposition. Anybody who opposes mass migration, oh, that sounds an awful lot like that guy who shot up whatever. Oh, you think that there are Jewish power structures in America? That sounds an awful lot like somebody who did violence. We're going to take away your guns and your platform. And anybody who talks like that is just like people that do violence. You understand why these things are unfolding the way that they are, and I don't know if anybody's going to stop them. I don't know if it's too far gone. We're entering into sort of the end game, so to speak. It's Avengers Endgame. America Endgame. Here we are. Right, where these things are really starting to spiral out of control. In California, right? Perfect place, ground zero of that. I was in a debate with Destiny not too long ago. I always reference this because everything I said in those debates, all his Bugman fans like to say, Nick doesn't have any numbers on this. Nick doesn't have any statistics on this. Nick said that immigrants are bringing diseases. Oh, but he doesn't have a statistic on that to pull out of his back pocket. Oh, measles comes back bigger than ever. We eliminated it in 2000. Nick said that they're going to cause more violence and terrorism, and there's going to be more of this because of diversity. Where's his facts? Terrorist attacks, like 10 of them in the past week, all owing to the same one. They're all copycats. Well, I keep referring back to it for a reason. But I was in this debate with Destiny a couple of weeks ago. I popped onto the Ralph Retort to debate him. And we talked about Los Angeles and San Francisco. He said, well, you look at diverse cities and they're really working across America. We have so many diverse cities in America and they're doing just great. And he listed Los Angeles, San Francisco, these types of cities. And I look there and I see nothing but problems. I see nothing but poop in the streets, and I see heroin needles, and I see gang shootings, and I see terrorist attacks. And this is America. Los Angeles is only the furthest along, but it's coming everywhere. It's coming to Omaha, it's coming to St. Louis, it's coming to Chicago, Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Boston. It's coming everywhere. It's coming everywhere where the diversity is. You think, oh, well, I'm fine. It's not coming here. Well, wait until you find yourself in the wrong church one day. Wait until you find yourself in the wrong Walmart, in the crossfire of the wrong intersection. You're living a completely normal life until you aren't, right? It didn't affect you until it does. And as these things increase in frequency, it's all just a numbers game, right? So I guess I wish everybody luck. Hope you find yourself only in the right places at the right times in the next 100 years, because I guarantee you, as these demographic changes really start to take effect in the places where it's not talked about so much on the news or it's less obvious, like we know about Los Angeles, we know about San Francisco, we know about Chicago. Where's the city that we don't know about, right? Where's the one that we aren't talking about in the news? As these things continue to accelerate, I think you're only going to get a lot more. So 2017 Stockholm truck attack, it was Christchurch. And it seems like since Christchurch, you've got retaliation and copycats. And these things have a compound effect. You may have another. This one was particularly poorly done. And there is, I think, a story outside of just the diversity angle of the synagogue shooting. Here was a literal kid, a 19-year-old kid who saw an extreme action. He said in this manifesto, which was a totally bad, just insane copycat. I guess they're both insane and bad, but this one in particular was just like low quality. You could tell this person had issues. In this John Earnest manifesto, he said that he had only been following these kind of politics for a year and a half. So this is a kid who latched onto this stuff recently. This is not somebody who was brought up and had lots of, family troubles or illness or anything like that. Here's somebody where it only happened the last year and a half that he got swept along for the ride in this crazy movement, and now his life is destroyed. So, yeah, I mean, it's a terrible tragedy that the shooting happened, and that's obviously the bigger tragedy. But I think it is also a tragedy that a young kid who maybe was right about immigration, right? Maybe was right to feel angry at the fact that the country's going away and there is sin, but was led down a very dark and twisted and evil path beyond that, led to the extreme fringes of that kind of thinking. You could see where somebody like that is probably going to regret that in a little while, right? And you could see where maybe people who talk about those things should be ignored. I've been saying that for a long time, and have been vindicated on that, I think, as we see more attacks like this. In the shadows of these kinds of movements where we do kind of operate outside the system, and it's unfortunate that that's the case, you're not going to hear this anywhere else. That's the sickest part about this. It should be so obvious that this is happening, and maybe I sound like I'm repeating myself, but every other publication in response to this, like they don't understand what's coming. Charlie Kirk, the GOP, all these losers in the GOP are all saying, oh, yep, John Earnest shooting up a synagogue. You know who's responsible for that? Ilhan Omar. It's like you're just lying. You're just a grifter, and you're just simply lying. And both sides do that, sure, but both sides are playing this political game at the expense and ignoring, right? What is the word? Neglecting the far greater problem. Yeah, sure, okay, we're going to use this as our political football. We're going to try and use this before the left does. Oh, actually, who John Earnest was inspired by? It wasn't Brenton Tarrant, and it wasn't Adolf Hitler. No, it was Ilhan Omar. So it's anti-Semitism, like the New York Times. It's like, I understand that mentality, but you're lying, and you're lying to pursue a very short-term political goal. Meanwhile, nobody's talking about what's really happening. So to me, it's just, that's the sickest part about it. You're always going to have sick people. These things happen. But the people that are supposed to be doing something about it, our elites in the media and the government, they just keep playing these games like they don't understand we're really facing an existential problem here. School shootings and terrorist attacks and all this other stuff. Well, what the real problem is? The left taking people's guns. The real problem is Ilhan Omar criticizing Israel. Like, these people are kind of the problem. These people are the problem, right? These people are the problem at the end of the day, ultimately, because they're the ones that allow this kind of stuff to continue happening. If you see synagogue and mosque and church shootings blowing up and everything, and your reaction is like, oh, I'll just keep playing these bullshit political games. I'll just keep, I'm going to appear on Fox. Yeah, that's really bad, but I'm going to appear on Fox News in 5 minutes, and we're going to knock their socks off. We're going to blame it on Ilhan Omar. It's genius. And they're talking to their consultant friends, while the country burns around you. I think maybe that's the issue, right? So I know a lot of left-wing people are saying, Charlie Kirk's blaming it on Ilhan Omar. Yeah, they're a bunch of liars. Nobody's talking about the real problem on either side. You're going to get more of it until you talk about it, address it, begin to fix it, and nobody's really willing or able to do that just yet. So